It was a bustling Monday morning, the kind where the world seems to vibrate with possibilities. Inside the office of a reputed tech firm, the manager, Mr. Randall Clark, was reviewing applications for an open position. A towering man in his late 40s, Clark exuded authority, but his prejudices lay just beneath his polished exterior. His desk was cluttered with resumes, but one stood out, a strikingly impressive application from Maya Brooks. Maya, a Harvard graduate with glowing recommendations, was no ordinary candidate. Born and raised in an underprivileged neighborhood, she had defied the odds to become a rising star in her field. Her determination was unmatched, her credentials impeccable, and her drive contagious. However, the moment Clark saw her application photo, his demeanor shifted. "She's not what we're looking for," he muttered under his breath, setting her file aside. This wasn't the first time Clark let his biases guide him. A staunch believer in maintaining a specific image for the company, he had dismissed candidates for reasons unrelated to their qualifications. Today, Maya became another name on that list. Meanwhile, Maya arrived at the office for her interview. She wore a navy blazer, her natural curls framing her face, and carried herself with quiet confidence. As she entered the reception area, she noticed the hesitant smile of the receptionist and the furtive glances of employees. Despite these subtle hints, Maya remained focused. When Clark finally met her in the interview room, his tone was curt. He barely acknowledged her stellar achievements and seemed more interested in her background than her skills. Maya answered every question with poise, but the manager's dismissive attitude was unmistakable. "Thank you for coming in. We'll be in touch," Clark said at the end, not bothering to hide his lack of enthusiasm. Walking out of the building, Maya felt a pang of disappointment. She had faced biases before, but each instance only strengthened her resolve. This time would be no different. As Maya drove home, she replayed the interview in her mind. The questions had been superficial, the tone condescending. She recognized the signs all too well. Despite her qualifications, she knew the odds had been stacked against her the moment Clark saw her. At the office, Clark went about his day as usual, sifting through other candidates' resumes. Later that afternoon, he chose to hire someone else, a less experienced but familiar-looking applicant whose profile fit the company culture in his mind. The decision was quick, and Maya's application was discarded without a second thought. Meanwhile, Maya received a generic rejection email. Though disappointed, she refused to let the incident define her. Instead, she decided to investigate the company's hiring practices. Using her network, Maya connected with other professionals who had applied to the same firm. It didn't take long for a pattern to emerge. "I was overqualified for the role, but they told me I wasn't a good cultural fit," one candidate shared. "They barely asked me about my skills. It felt like they'd made up their mind the moment I walked in," said another. Maya compiled these stories, noticing a recurring trend. Most of the rejected candidates were from minority backgrounds. With her growing pile of evidence, she decided to consult an employment lawyer. At the same time, whispers about Clark's hiring biases started circulating within the company. Some employees had noticed the lack of diversity in their teams and began raising questions. But in a workplace where Clark's word was law, their concerns went unheard. The tension mounted when Maya stumbled upon a significant detail. The company was part of a government-funded diversity initiative. Clark's hiring practices not only violated ethical standards, but could also jeopardize the company's funding. One evening, while reviewing the evidence she had gathered, Maya received an unexpected call from a well-known journalist who specialized in workplace discrimination. Intrigued by Maya's findings, the journalist agreed to investigate further. Days turned into weeks, and Clark remained unaware of the brewing storm. To him, Maya was just another candidate who didn't make the cut, a decision he thought would never come back to haunt him. The journalist, Sarah Hughes, dove into the story with meticulous care. She reached out to former employees, analyzed hiring data, and unearthed years of subtle but systematic bias in Clark's recruitment processes. As the pieces came together, it became clear that Clark had not only rejected highly qualified minority candidates, but also created a hostile environment for those who had managed to join the company. Sarah's investigation painted a damning picture. Over 80% of hires in the past 5 years came from similar socioeconomic and racial backgrounds. Several employees had left the company citing workplace discrimination, with no action taken on their complaints. Maya's rejection wasn't an isolated case. It was part of a larger, troubling pattern. Meanwhile, Maya continued her fight. She had grown tired of staying silent in the face of injustice. After consulting her lawyer, she filed an official complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC. The complaint, combined with Sarah's growing exposé, created ripples that reached the company's higher-ups. Unbeknownst to Clark, his superiors had begun an internal review of his hiring practices. Emails, interview notes, and hiring statistics were scrutinized. Clark, who had always considered himself untouchable, started noticing a shift in the atmosphere. "Randall, we need to talk about your recent hiring decisions," his boss said during a tense meeting. Clark brushed off the concerns, blaming the lack of diversity on a supposed lack of qualified candidates. But his excuses were met with skepticism. While the company's internal review unfolded, Sarah's article was published. Titled Behind Closed Doors, Systemic Discrimination in a Leading Tech Firm, the piece was a bombshell. It featured anonymized testimonials, hard data, and Maya's story as the centerpiece. The article quickly went viral, sparking outrage online. Social media users rallied behind Maya, with hashtags like Justice for Maya and End Workplace Bias trending within hours. Clark's name, though not mentioned in the article, was soon linked to the controversy. His colleagues began to distance themselves, and even his once loyal allies questioned his judgment. For the first time in his career, Clark felt the weight of accountability. The pressure escalated when Maya was invited to speak on a popular morning show. Calm and composed, she recounted her experience, highlighting the broader issue of workplace discrimination. Her words resonated deeply. "This isn't just about me. It's about the countless others who've been overlooked, underestimated, and denied opportunities they deserved. It's time we hold people accountable and demand better." As Maya's voice reached a national audience, the company's board faced immense backlash. The CEO released a statement promising a full investigation and immediate reforms. Public trust had to be restored, and it was clear that scapegoating Clark was inevitable. Back at the office, Clark was summoned to an emergency meeting. His demeanor was defensive, but the evidence was irrefutable. "Your decisions have cost us not only talent but our reputation," his boss said, eyes steely. Clark was asked to step down immediately. For the first time, Clark faced the consequences of his actions. Alone in his office, he looked around at the walls adorned with awards and accolades. They felt hollow now, reminders of a career built on exclusion rather than merit. In the weeks following Clark's resignation, the company underwent a significant transformation. The board brought in a new interim manager, someone with a proven track record of championing diversity and inclusion. A thorough audit of the company's hiring practices was initiated, with independent consultants brought in to ensure transparency. Maya's case, combined with Sarah's investigative work, had shed light on the systemic issues plaguing not just the company but the broader industry. Other tech firms, fearing similar scandals, began revisiting their own policies, setting off a ripple effect of accountability and reform. As for Maya, her story didn't end with Clark's downfall. She received offers from several companies impressed by her resilience and qualifications. However, she chose a position at an organization that shared her values, one where her voice would be heard and her contributions would be valued. Despite moving on, Maya wasn't content to leave things as they were. She partnered with advocacy groups to create workshops aimed at educating companies about unconscious bias in hiring. Her story became a cornerstone of these sessions, a powerful example of the harm caused by prejudice and the strength it takes to confront it. Back at the company, employees began to notice a shift. Recruitment processes were revamped to include blind reviews of resumes, ensuring candidates were judged solely on their skills and experience. Diversity training became mandatory for all employees, including upper management. These changes were met with a mix of skepticism and hope, but as time passed, their impact became undeniable. One of the most significant changes was the creation of an internal diversity committee. Comprised of employees from various backgrounds, the committee was tasked with monitoring hiring practices, addressing grievances, and fostering an inclusive workplace culture. The transformation wasn't easy. Some employees resisted the changes, clinging to the old ways. But the leadership remained firm, emphasizing the importance of accountability and growth. "We owe it to our employees and ourselves to do better," the CEO stated during a company-wide meeting. As for Clark, his career took a sharp downward turn. He struggled to find work, his reputation tarnished by the controversy. For months, he avoided public events, unwilling to face the judgment of his peers. Eventually, he sought counseling to address his biases, realizing the depth of the harm he had caused, not just to others but to himself. One day, Clark reached out to Maya through a mutual contact. Hesitant but curious, Maya agreed to meet him. Their conversation was tense but honest. "I was wrong," Clark admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "I see that now, and I'm sorry for what I did to you and so many others." Maya listened, her expression calm. "Acknowledging the harm is the first step," she said. "What matters is what you do next." Their interaction wasn't a resolution but a beginning, one that hinted at the possibility of redemption through action. Months passed, and the dust began to settle. The company, once synonymous with exclusivity and bias, started to earn a new reputation. The reforms introduced after Clark's departure weren't just performative, they became ingrained in the organization's DNA. The Diversity Committee spearheaded initiatives that fostered collaboration and understanding. Celebrations of cultural heritage, mentorship programs for underrepresented groups, and transparent grievance processes created a sense of belonging. Employees who once felt voiceless began to thrive, their contributions shaping the company's future. Maya's impact extended far beyond the company. Her workshops gained traction, leading to invitations to speak at conferences and universities. She became a prominent voice in the fight against workplace discrimination, blending her personal experience with actionable insights. Her message was clear. Inclusion isn't just a moral imperative. It's the key to unlocking innovation and success. For Clark, life was a stark contrast to his days of authority. He spent his time reflecting on his actions and educating himself about the very biases he once perpetuated. He joined a program for executives seeking to rebuild their careers through accountability and learning. While he knew he could never undo the harm he caused, he hoped to contribute to meaningful change. One day, during a panel discussion about diversity in the workplace, Clark made an appearance. Sitting on the same stage as Maya, he openly acknowledged his failures. "I was blind to my own biases and the damage they caused. It took losing everything to finally see," he said, his voice heavy with sincerity. Maya, seated beside him, nodded. "Acknowledgement is the first step," she said, echoing her earlier words to him. "But true change comes from consistent action. It's a journey, not a destination." The audience's response was mixed. Some applauded Clark's courage, while others remained skeptical. Maya understood their reactions. Change was always met with resistance. But she also believed in the power of transformation, even for someone like Clark. As the years went by, the impact of these events continued to ripple outward. The tech industry saw a steady increase in diversity, driven by the lessons learned from Maya's story. Companies adopted inclusive hiring practices, and organizations supporting underrepresented groups gained visibility and funding. Maya's journey became a source of inspiration for countless individuals facing similar struggles. She received messages from young professionals who felt seen and empowered by her story. Her advocacy work blossomed into a foundation that provided resources and training to companies worldwide, ensuring that her fight for justice would leave a lasting legacy. Reflecting on her journey, Maya felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had turned rejection into opportunity, prejudice into progress, and silence into a powerful voice for change. The road hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. As she stood on the stage of a packed auditorium years later, addressing a crowd of aspiring leaders, her final words echoed with conviction. "Your worth is not defined by others' inability to see it. Stand firm, speak out, and remember, change starts with you." The audience rose in applause, a testament to the enduring power of resilience and the possibility of transformation.